Wolves in Winter is a British doom metal band out of Bedford, West Yorkshire in England, and The Calling Quiet is their debut full-length album. This is an interesting sort of a meeting of mind between modern doom metal's melodicism and dramatic affect, and classic doom metal's more heavy metal stridency and more emotional depth that you might find in the despair of classic doom metal versus the sort of uplifting post music feeling of a lot of modern doom metal. That's not to say that this sounds like Paul Bearer or whatever, but we'll get there. I think first it's interesting to note that this band is sort of pulled together by a lot of people who you may or may not recognize from former lineups of Solstice, a couple of members of Monolith Cult, which is a very good underrated doom metal band, and the main guitarist from Slammer, an old thrash metal band which you might recognize from the late 80s if you happen to be that old. So it's an interesting group of folks. The one that you probably won't recognize is the vocalist, who actually stands out quite a bit here, and he was in a band called Pigwitch, which is worth going and checking out if you're interested in something more oriented with psychedelic rock and that kind of thing. But it shows you where his range is coming from and what he's pulled out for this album, which is pretty exceptional. So we'll get right to it and just cut to a clip that shows some of his range and the general fidelity of the album. So at this point, as far as I know, the band hasn't released any singles from the album, but they've released 2 cut tracks from the album, which were accepted for the sake of keeping it about 40 minutes long for the vinyl release. Now, this was a great choice, intentional or not, to cut off some of the less interesting pieces. And unfortunately, this makes the build up towards the album uninteresting for most people because it lacks the best songs on the album being showcased. In fact, you've kind of gotten the worst, easier to cut pieces to introduce it, even though they're not related to the album as it is proper on vinyl. So, the clip will have been. Both clips will be from songs on the actual album that I've shared here, and that will give you a better idea of why I'm excited about this record. And I think that if you're a fan of the dramatism of 90s Solstice, maybe the Matroverse era of that, maybe not quite that much despair, but the introspection of earlier Warning, maybe just the first album, the second one is a bit of a different thing, but also modern influences such as Spirit Adrift, where we get some of the triumphal heavy metal feeling types of songs that are braced by more of a thicker sludge metal production. Not sludge, but it's got its high fidelity. It's a big sound from Chris Fielding here, and the it makes for an album that kind of snuck up on me because I wasn't expecting much, and there was no single to it, accompanying it. So once I got in, I was like, the great songs kept hitting, and for the most part, every single song on here comes with meaning, and there's a purpose for the every build, every chorus. There's a lot of emotion and sort of draining heaviness to all of it that stuck with me. I thought it was a very memorable album in general, but also one that has a lot of ideas packed into those, I think, 6 or so songs overall. There's a little bit of, I enjoy bands like Pale Divine, but you could see even more references in there. I touch upon everything from Bolt Thrower to Alice in Chains in the review. If that says anything about the amount of ground they cover and how heavy it is. So I think that's a good enough summation of what this is. It's a modern doom metal sound, some traditional, a little bit of light sludge influences to keep it interesting, but overall, this album is about the song, and it's very much about the versatility of the vocalist impressing me. I think that was the big takeaway beyond the obvious professionalism and really effective songwriting here. So, bit of a little like an out of left field great here at the end of February. This is one of my favorite records of February this year, and it comes with a very high recommendation. Definitely don't judge it by the preview songs, and wait for the actual songs that are on the album to come out. And yeah, dig into the review a little bit more. I get into more detail and see if it's your kind of thing, because it was definitely my kind of thing.